Okay, well, so what are some of the strategies that you use when you go into the classroom and you begin to decode, let's say, an ad?
Yeah.
How do you go about that,
Yeah.
doing that in your own work?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing to recognise is that studying the media it doesn't just involve a change of labels on the timetable. You're actually talking about a new way of working with kids. And my own feeling is that for any media class with any age group, whether it's postgraduates or it's 7 or 8-year-old kids, that you begin with an object of reflection. You begin with something that's taken from the culture. You begin with something that you can reflect upon, that raises some interesting problems either for you or for the kids. The kids themselves can actually choose the material if they want. There's nothing sacrosanct about the content. And that's an interesting process because it breaks the normal teacher-student hierarchies. In the teaching of most subjects, the teacher is an accredited expert, and he or she possesses the knowledge or the information which is inevitably passed down. The process is a hierarchical one to students who are presumed to be ignorant. It's what Paulo Freire, the great Brazilian educator, calls the banking concept of education. You deposit the knowledge and information on the largely passive and presumably ignorant students. What's interesting about that process is that it tends not to develop and inculcate a critical attitude. Because if the student, even if the tutor wants the student to be critical, if the student is being critical, he is being critical of the tutor and the tutor's own material and knowledge, that the personality of the tutor is very much tied up with his or her expertise. If you're an English teacher, you are bringing this poem that you value into the class. If you're a historian, you are selecting these as important questions and problems, and that that encourages passivity, I think, rather than critical analysis, as does the sort of dominant passive mode. So what happens if you put an ad up on a screen or you project a film or whatever, is that immediately the relationships change. That suddenly we, as you're the teacher, I'm the student, but we're together looking at the object out there. And we can talk about it and we can discuss it, and you can be critical of it, or I can be critical of that without being critical of you. In other words, the media are transmitting knowledge and information and ideas laterally, and we can come in at it, and knowledge isn't actually passed down. We are creating our own knowledge through our own critical interaction with whatever the text is. So that knowledge, that's a whole new epistemology. Knowledge isn't something that is out there that we have got to accommodate ourselves to. We've got to learn, and we've got to actually employ every short-term memory technique that we know in order to pass some wretched exam, which will actually consist of giving the tutor back the stuff that he's given to us, almost pure regurgitation. Criticism, no thanks. What I think studying the media does is to posit a whole new theory of knowledge, and that is that knowledge is something that you create, that you make your own, and you do that through your critical interaction with the world out there, and that changes it. It changes the world, it acts upon it, and through reflection we can then begin to say, well, how should it be different? That's the importance of seeing TV or media as a construct. If you see it as reality, you can't change it, you can't question it. It's a bit like questioning a tree or a cloud or whatever. If you see it as a construct, you're immediately saying, well, who's doing the constructing? Who's behind it? Who's producing it? For what purposes? Using what techniques? For what audience? With what intention? Whose interests are being served? And so on. So, talking about media is much, much more than saying, let's have another subject, It's actually about a new way of working. It's about using many, many more participatory techniques. Kids have got to be involved and on the inside of the construction process. It means not only looking at TV, not only analyzing text, but making yourself, making your own news programs, making your own TV, using photographs, and so on and so forth. So it's a much more dynamic process where there's a total interaction of theory and practice.